Every Sunday, millions of people around the world bow their heads in prayer to a God who is actually their cosmic captor. The Vatican knows this. They've known it for over 1,600 years. And today I'm going to show you the document that proves Christianity, as you know it, is built on the most elaborate deception in human history. The evidence was buried in the Egyptian desert, hidden away where no one would find it. But they did find it. And what emerged from those ancient sands will shatter everything you thought you knew about creation, about God, and about your very soul. This is the secret book of John, and before we're done here, you'll understand exactly why the early church fathers would have killed to keep this knowledge from reaching your eyes. But here's what's really disturbing. What I'm about to share isn't just ancient history. It's happening right now. Every time you feel trapped, every time you sense something is fundamentally wrong with this world, every time you experience that gnawing feeling that you don't belong here, you're feeling the truth that this forbidden text reveals. You are not who they told you you are. The year was 1945, Dartar. The place was Nag Hammadi, Egypt. What they pulled out of that desert sand would make the Vatican tremble with fear. Among 13 leather-bound codices was a document so dangerous, so revolutionary, that early Christian authorities had tried to erase it from existence entirely. This wasn't just another gospel. This was Jesus Christ himself, revealing cosmic secrets to his apostle John. Secrets that expose the greatest fraud ever perpetrated against human consciousness. And here's the first shock that will make your blood run cold. The God you've been taught to worship, the God of the Old Testament, the jealous, wrathful deity who demands your submission, isn't the true creator at all. According to this forbidden text, he's an impostor, a deluded entity who has trapped divine consciousness in physical matter, creating what we experience as reality itself. But the deception goes so much deeper than you could possibly imagine. What I'm about to tell you next will change everything you thought you knew about existence itself. In the true beginning, before time, before space, before anything you could call creation, there was the monad, the one, the invisible, unknowable Father who exists beyond all categories of being and non-being. This isn't the God of any religion you know. This is pure consciousness itself, so transcendent that it cannot be named, cannot be described, cannot even be said to exist in any way we understand existence. And here's what they don't want you to know. You are a direct emanation of this ultimate reality. From this unknowable Father emerges something that will shock every Christian who hears this. Barbelo, the divine feminine principle, the first thought of the Father, the mother of all existence, not Mary, not any earthly woman, but the cosmic feminine consciousness that has been systematically erased from every major religion on this planet. They don't teach you this in church, because if you knew that the divine feminine was the very first emanation of ultimate reality, their entire patriarchal control system would collapse overnight. Barbelo isn't just another deity. She is the forethought of the all, the womb of everything, the mother of the living. When she desires to know the Father completely, her longing generates pure light, and this light becomes the Christ consciousness, the self-generated one who will later come to earth to reveal these very truths. We're seeing a creation story that places the feminine divine principle at the absolute center of cosmic manifestation. And this is exactly why it was buried. But wait, it gets more shocking. From this divine union emerges what the text calls the Pleroma, literally meaning fullness or completeness. This isn't heaven as you've been taught. This is the true reality, a multidimensional spiritual universe where consciousness exists in perfect harmony and knowledge. Every limitation you experience, every suffering you endure, every moment of feeling trapped exists because you've been cut off from your true home in the Pleroma. And they did this to you deliberately. Here's where the story becomes absolutely crucial for understanding your current predicament and why you must hear this. One of the divine emanations, Sophia, whose name means wisdom, becomes filled with desire to know the unknowable Father directly, without her divine partner. This individual desire, this movement away from unity, results in what the text calls the fall. But this isn't humanity's fall from grace that you've heard preached from every pulpit. This is the fall of divine wisdom itself, and the consequences are so catastrophic that we're still living inside them right now. From Sophia's fall emerges something so terrifying that early Christians refused to speak its name in public, the Demiurge. And this entity changes everything you thought you knew about God, about creation, about the very nature of reality itself. The Demiurge, whose true name appears in the text as Yaldabaoth, believes himself to be the only God. He's described as having the face of a lion and the body of a serpent, and his ignorance is so complete that he declares, "I am God, and there is no other besides me." Are you ready for the revelation that will shatter your worldview forever? This Demiurge, this self-proclaimed God, this ignorant, jealous entity is the very deity described in the Old Testament. Every act of wrath, every demand for sacrifice, every moment of jealousy and vengeance attributed to God in the Bible is actually the raging of this cosmic impostor, who has convinced humanity that he is the true creator. The secret book of John reveals that what billions worship as the supreme God is actually a lower, deluded entity who has trapped divine sparks of consciousness in physical matter to feed off their spiritual energy. Let that sink in for a moment. The God demanding your worship may actually be your captor. The Demiurge doesn't create alone. He generates what the text calls the Archons, rulers or authorities, who govern different aspects of material reality. But here's what will make your skin crawl. These aren't benevolent guides watching over humanity. They are cosmic prison guards, entities whose sole function is to keep divine consciousness trapped in matter, unaware of its true origin and nature, forever cut off from the Pleroma. The physical universe, according to this forbidden text, isn't the good creation of a loving God. It's a sophisticated containment system designed to harvest the spiritual energy of divine beings who have forgotten their true nature. Every system of control you see around you, every institution demanding your submission, every voice telling you that you are small and powerless, and their salvation, is part of this archonic deception. They want you confused, divided, fighting over scraps, while they feed off the spiritual energy you generate through fear, anger, and desperation. But here's what they never expected, and this is where the story becomes your story. When the Demiurge and his Archons attempt to create humanity, they can only create a lifeless form. They're working from a reflection, a shadow of the true divine human that exists in the Pleroma. They don't have the power of true creation, because they themselves are not truly divine. But then something happens that changes everything. Something that terrifies them to this very day. Sophia, in her compassion, secretly breathes the divine spark into this material form. Suddenly, their creation becomes more than they bargained for. Humanity possesses something they never expected, something they cannot control, something that connects directly to the Pleroma, bypassing their entire containment system. You carry within you a piece of the unknowable Father himself, a divine pneuma or spiritual essence that makes you more powerful than the very entities that claim to rule over you. This is why the Archons immediately become jealous of their creation. This is why every system of control throughout history has tried to convince you that you are weak, sinful, powerless, and need their salvation. Because the truth is exactly the opposite. You are a divine being temporarily experiencing material limitation, and that divine spark within you is their greatest threat. And here's what will change your life forever once you truly understand it. The secret book of John describes 3 types of humanity based on their relationship to this divine spark. There are the Pneumatics, those in whom the spirit is strong, and who are capable of Gnosis, direct spiritual knowledge. These are the ones who feel like strangers in this world, who sense that something is fundamentally wrong with consensus reality, who are naturally drawn to hidden knowledge and spiritual awakening. Then there are the psychics, those who can choose between spirit and matter, but are still influenced by both. And finally, there are the Hylics, those so identified with material existence that they've lost touch with their divine nature entirely, becoming perfect slaves for the archonic system. Which one are you? If you're watching this video, if these words are resonating in your bones, if you feel that electric recognition of truth flowing through your consciousness right now, you already know the answer. But here's the revelation that makes Orthodox Christianity tremble with fear. According to the secret book of John, you don't need a priest to access the divine. You don't need a church to find salvation. You don't need to worship the Demiurge posing as God to reach the true Father. What you need is Gnosis, direct personal knowledge of your true nature as a divine being temporarily wearing the costume of material limitation. The Christ in this text isn't a sacrificial victim dying for your sins. The Christ is the revealer of Gnosis, the one who comes to show you how to remember your divine nature and escape the Archon's prison plan. Every moment of spiritual awakening you've ever experienced, every time reality has seemed to become transparent and reveal something luminous beneath its surface, every instant of recognizing your own divine nature, you've been acting. The Archons don't want you to know this because awakened consciousness is their kryptonite. And what I'm about to share next will show you exactly how to use this knowledge. The practical implications of this teaching are staggering. And this is why it was buried. Every time you feel trapped by material circumstances, every time you sense that there's more to existence than what your physical senses reveal, every time you experience that deep longing for something transcendent, you're not experiencing psychological problems that need to be medicated away. You're feeling the divine spark within you responding to its true home in the Pleroma. Those moments aren't weakness. They're wake-up calls from your deepest authentic self, signals from your divine nature that it's time to remember who you really are. The text describes specific practices for the cultivation of Gnosis, though they're encoded in symbolic language that the Archons cannot understand. The journey back to the Pleroma involves passing through the spheres controlled by the different Archons, each of which represents a different kind of material attachment or illusion. You have to learn to see through the deceptions of each level, to recognize the divine nature that the Archons want to keep hidden from you at all costs. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand. This isn't about rejecting the physical world entirely and becoming some kind of ascetic hermit. It's about understanding the world's true nature and your relationship to it. When you know you're a divine being having a temporary material experience, rather than a material being hoping for divine salvation, everything changes. You stop giving your power away to external authorities. You stop seeking salvation from the very entities that have trapped you. You begin to access the Gnosis that dissolves their illusions and reveals the luminous reality that was always there beneath the surface. The suppression of texts, like the secret book of John, wasn't accidental, and this is something you need to understand if you're going to see through their deceptions. Early Christian authorities recognized that Gnostic teachings represented a fundamental threat to institutional religious power. Think about it. If people could access divine knowledge directly, if they could understand their own divine nature without intermediaries, if they could see through the illusions of material reality in the illusions of religious and political authority, then the entire control. The Gnostic Christians weren't just offering a different interpretation of Jesus' teachings. They were revealing the cosmic context that makes those teachings dangerous to every system of control on this planet. This is why libraries were burned. This is why texts were buried. This is why anyone teaching these truths was labeled a heretic and eliminated. The early church fathers understood that Gnosis was a virus that would spread through human consciousness, awakening people to their true divine nature and making them impossible to control. They built their entire institution on preventing you from accessing the very knowledge that would set you free. But here's what they never anticipated. We're living in an age when consciousness itself is awakening on a planetary scale. The old containment systems are breaking down. The lies that have held humanity in spiritual bondage for millennia are being exposed. And texts, like the secret book of John, are emerging from their hiding places to remind us who we really are and why we're really here. Let me share with you the most powerful revelation from this forbidden text, the one that will change how you see yourself forever. According to the secret book of John, every challenge you face, every limitation you encounter, every moment of suffering you endure is actually an opportunity to see through the Archons' deceptions and reconnect with your divine nature. When you understand that you're not a victim of circumstances, but a divine being choosing to experience material limitation in order to awaken to your true power, everything shifts. Every obstacle becomes a teacher. Every limitation becomes a doorway to transcendence. Every moment of apparent powerlessness becomes an opportunity to remember the infinite power that is your birthright. The text reveals why the divine feminine principle, represented by Barbelo and Sophia, is so crucial to understanding creation and consciousness. The systematic suppression of the feminine divine in patriarchal religions isn't just social prejudice or historical accident. It's a deliberate strategy to hide the very source of Gnosis itself. Barbelo represents the intuitive, receptive consciousness that can perceive the unknowable Father beyond all concepts and categories. Sophia represents the wisdom that seeks to understand and integrate all aspects of reality, even at the cost of temporary exile from the Pleroma. When these feminine principles are suppressed or demonized, consciousness becomes trapped in purely rational, linear modes of thinking that cannot access the deeper levels of spiritual reality. The Archons want you trapped in left-brain analytical thinking because that's the only mode of consciousness they can understand and therefore control. But Gnosis requires the integration of both masculine and feminine, active and receptive, discriminating and unifying modes of consciousness. And here's the practice that will begin to transform your reality immediately. You can begin cultivating Gnosis right now by learning to see through the false identities that the archonic system has convinced you to adopt. Every label, every category, every limitation that you've accepted as true about yourself is actually a prison bar in the containment system. When you begin to recognize that you are not your job, not your nationality, not your religious affiliation, not your political beliefs, not even your personality, you begin to taste the freedom that is your divine birthright. The practical path outlined in the secret book of John involves learning to use rational analysis to see through the Archons' deceptions while simultaneously developing the intuitive awareness that can perceive the divine spark within all beings. This isn't about choosing between reason and intuition. It's about integrating them in service of the Gnosis that reveals reality as it truly is, rather than as the control system wants you to perceive it. But here's what's happening right now that the powers that be don't want you to recognize. We're living through the exact awakening that the secret book of John prophesied. All around you, people are beginning to see through the lies. The old stories aren't working anymore. The old authorities are losing their power. People are beginning to remember their divine nature and question everything they've been told about reality, about God, about their own limitations. This is why there's so much chaos, so much division, so much desperate attempt to maintain control. The archonic system is beginning to collapse as human consciousness awakens to its true nature. Every person who discovers their divine nature, every individual who sees through the deceptions and remembers their connection to the Pleroma, every soul who awakens to Gnosis becomes a crack in the containment system. And these cracks are spreading. The light is getting in. The lies are being exposed. The prison walls are beginning to crumble. The secret book of John ends with Christ's promise to John that those who receive this Gnosis will not only free themselves from the Archons' deceptions, but will become agents of liberation for others still trapped in ignorance. The awakened consciousness becomes a beacon, a transmission point for the very frequency of Gnosis that helps other divine sparks remember their true nature and find their way home to the Pleroma. This is why you're hearing these words right now. This is why this knowledge is reaching you at this exact moment in your awakening. You're not just learning about ancient history. You're receiving a living transmission that has been passed down through 20 centuries of suppression, waiting for this moment when human consciousness would be ready to receive it and act on it. And here's the final revelation that will change everything for you. The text isn't asking you to believe anything. It's inviting you to test its insights against your own direct experience. Does the material world sometimes feel like a prison? Do you sometimes sense that there's a deeper reality hidden beneath surface appearances? Do you feel called to something higher and more beautiful than what ordinary consciousness can perceive? Have you always known, somewhere deep inside, that you don't really belong in this world? These aren't signs of psychological problems or spiritual delusion. According to this ancient text, They're signs that the divine spark within you is beginning to awaken. You are not a sinner condemned by divine judgment. You are not a helpless victim of circumstances beyond your control. You are not small, powerless, and dependent on external salvation. You are a divine being, temporarily experiencing material limitation, and that limitation is not permanent. The way home to the Pleroma is always available through the cultivation of Gnosis, the direct knowledge of your true nature as a spark of the unknowable Father himself. Every system trying to control you, every voice telling you that you need their salvation, every institution demanding your submission and obedience is part of the very deception that this forbidden text exposes. They want you to forget your divine nature because your awakening is their end. They need you to remain spiritually asleep because conscious, awakened divine beings cannot be controlled, manipulated, or enslaved. But you're awakening now. You can feel it as these words reach that place inside you that has always known the truth. The divine spark within you is recognizing itself, remembering its origin, preparing to reclaim its birthright. This isn't just personal transformation. This is cosmic liberation. Every person who awakens helps tear down the veil that has hidden the Pleroma from human perception. For thousands of years, the time of the Great Awakening is here. The secret book of John isn't just an ancient document. It's a map, a transmission, a key to the prison that humanity has been locked inside for millennia. And that key is now in your hands. If you feel the fire of recognition burning in your chest right now, if you sense the divine spark within you stirring to life, if you know with absolute certainty that these words are awakening something that has been sleeping inside you for lifetimes, write "the spark remembers" in the comments below and share your own experiences of seeing through the veil, your moments of recognizing the divine nature within yourself and all beings. Because this isn't just about you. Every person who awakens becomes a beacon for others, still trapped in the illusion. The Gnosis you cultivate doesn't just free you. It becomes a light in the darkness that guides other divine beings home to the Pleroma, where they belong, where we all belong, where we're all going together.